Good morning. I would like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, April 24th, 2025. I would like to start by wishing everyone happy Take Your Child to Work Day. Those watching on YouTube might hear some more background noise than usual because we do have a bunch of PSC kids in the room today observing our open meeting. So thank you for your patience, and kids, thank you so much again for being here. We're very excited to have you. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, April 10th, 2025, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, April 10, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 12, or the suggested minute associated with agenda item 13, agreeing to dismiss the complaint by joint execution of a consent agreement between the Commission and James Peterson Sons Incorporated, and accepting the proposed consent agreement as drafted, which assesses a forfeiture against James Peterson Sons, Inc. of $9,500 and a $950 surcharge to Diggers Hotline, and directs the respondent excavation crew to attend the educational course under WISSTAT 182.0175 sub 3 sub BR4 and pay all fees associated therewith.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 7 through 12.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 9300, PLI 135, I move we agree to dismiss the complaint by joint execution of a consent agreement and accept the proposed consent agreement as drafted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 14, 9809 CE 100, the application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity of Dawn Harvest Solar Energy. Commissioner Nieto has offered to lead our discussion today, so I'm going to turn it over to her and we'll talk through this. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Strand. On April 30, 2024, Dawn Harvest Solar Energy LLC, which is a subsidiary of Invenergy Solar Development North America LLC, filed an application with the PSC to receive a Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity, or CPCN, for the authority to construct a solar electric generation facility, battery energy storage system, or BESS, and generator tie line in Rock County, Wisconsin. The solar portion of the project is a solar PV electric generation facility made up of multiple fenced, proposed, and alternative project array areas. The solar facility would have a nameplate generation capacity of 150 megawatts AC, and there would also be a 50 megawatt AC BESS comprised of lithium-ion batteries housed inside outdoor enclosures that may have a thermal management system, fire suppression system, and other related components. The BESS will be able to shift the output of the solar generation system from the likely peak output at solar noon to a potential peak output in the early evening to meet rising electrical demand. A 138 kV generator tie line would be required to connect the project collector substation to the power grid. So we are reviewing the applicant's request for a CPCN today pursuant to Wisconsin Statute Section 196.491 Sub 3 and Wisconsin Administrative Code Chapter PSC 111. The solar electric generation facility is a Type 3 action under Wisconsin Admin Code Section PSC 4.10 Sub 3, and the BESS is a Type 2 action under Wisconsin Admin Code Section PSC 4.10 Sub 2. The Commission prepared an environmental assessment for this project that evaluates the location of the project and its potential environmental, community, and private property impacts. Renew Wisconsin intervened in support of the project, and its expert testified that this represents a significant investment in Wisconsin's clean energy transition and will significantly reduce greenhouse gas and air pollutant emissions while also providing economic and health benefits. The project, which represents a significant investment in the clean energy transition, will introduce a domestic source of renewable generation to the state. It will deliver significant economic benefits to the region and will provide local economic benefits. and will significantly reduce greenhouse gas and air pollutant emissions. Electricity production from Dawn Harvest would reduce CO2 emissions between 4.2 and 5.8 billion pounds over its expected 25-year operating period. In the first year alone, Renew witness Kolanowski estimated that the project will save between $510,000 and $1.1 million in healthcare costs. With limited exceptions associated with proposed order points, no party or participating staff disagree with the issuance of a CPCN for the project. I found the project meets all of the statutory requirements and will be voting to approve the project today. It's consistent with the Energy Priorities Law. It's one of the highest priorities. The design and location of the project are in the public interest with conditions. And with minor modifications or conditions mostly agreed to voluntarily by the applicant, the project is not expected to produce any adverse impacts on humans or on the natural environment. I'll note I did appreciate Dawn Harvest Solar's on-the-ground efforts in this process. The Dawn Harvest Solar offered good neighbor agreements to all adjacent property owners, and they also answered questions and provided information to any neighbor who had questions. So as an example of Dawn Harvest Solar's outreach efforts, project representatives have called neighbors who have asked questions via public comment in this commission docket to answer their questions and provide and explain resources in the application. They are also currently in the process of negotiating local agreements with Rock County, the town of Harmony, and the town of La Prairie, memorializing Dawn Harvest Solar's commitments to the local community. I'll note too that Dawn Harvest Solar is exploring commercially reasonable efforts to implement more agricultural co-use at the site, including sheep grazing. And they are expecting to return the land with healthier and more productive soil than before. A couple other notes about the benefits of this project. It will generate approximately $750,000 in annual payments through Wisconsin's Shared Revenue Utility Aid Program. And over its anticipated life, the project is expected to generate over $26 million. There will be, during construction, approximately 250 workers on site, and during operation, Dawn Harvest Solar expects 5 full-time local employees. So with that, I'd like to thank the applicant for its work and materials, Renew Wisconsin for its intervention in the proceeding, commission staff for all of its great work throughout the process, and the many members of the public who provided hundreds of comments during the environmental assessment process and during the project period and the public hearings. We saw some good public engagement from both people who had personal concerns about this project, as well as those who were in favor of the project. And the benefits it could bring to the area, the state, and the region. Public engagement is critically necessary for the process of reviewing and citing these types of projects, and I appreciate those who took the time and the effort to give their input. I also do appreciate staff and Dawn Harvest Solar looking into each of the comments of concern as well here. With that, I'll turn it over to my colleagues for any initial remarks they'd like to make.
Thank you, Commissioner Nieto. I don't have anything substantive to add. I echo your thanks and appreciation, especially for the public outreach and engagement, including the follow-up with people who weighed in. And I just want to thank you again for leading our discussion and kicking it off with such a great description.
And not too much to add on my behalf either. I thought the engagement was really impressive on the part of the applicant, and the extensive documentation of it was really helpful to see all the different forms and the length of time through which the engagement occurred. I thought was really top notch, so I really appreciated that. And then I want to echo thanks for the public comments. I thought hearing concerns and support from the community was really, really important, and helped guide my review of things like the decommissioning plan and things like that. That was a big concern, and so I appreciate those public comments for helping encouraged me to kind of go back and dig in another level deeper, and so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. We will walk through the decision matrix now and vote on each of the issues in the decision matrix. However, we will not be discussing the uncontested items. So issues 1 and 2 are both uncontested. So we'll start at issue 3. And issue 3 asks, would the proposed project comply with Wisconsin statute section 196.491 sub 3D6 and not unreasonably interfere with the orderly land use plans for the area. So this is about land use and about land use change. I will note that of the concerned comments received, a little over half of them were about land use changing from ag land use to solar generation. I'll note here that one of the key words in the statutory requirement that we're looking at here is unreasonably. Will it unreasonably interfere? This solar use is not incompatible with agricultural use. I found it does not unreasonably interfere, and also note the comments regarding respecting the participating landowner's property rights in this regard. So with that, I'm at alt 1 here. Thanks.
I'm at alt 1 as well for the same reasons. Thank you.
And I am at alt 1 as well.
Thank you. And then issue 4 asks whether Dawn Harvest Solar considered the use of brownfield sites as required by statute. It's pretty typical that really large solar sites don't have a lot of brownfield options that can be used. For example, the largest brownfield site identified in the state of Wisconsin in review for this project was much smaller than the area needed for the project. Here I'm at alternative 1.
Alternative 1. Thank you.
Alt 1 for me.
Thank you. And then issue 5 is about the design and location of the project, and 5A asks whether the design and location of the project is in the public interest, considering the siting criteria in statute. I was at alternative 1 here as well. I think the proposed and alternative sites meet the siting criteria. I would just note here, I think the applicant, I appreciated the applicant's additional alternative sites that were put up here. They offered more alternative sites than we even usually see, and that just gives us more flexibility. So if we were to preclude any array sites, there would still be ample sites for on-the-ground construction to be able to be flexible and to have plenty of sites to choose from. I don't have any sites I would preclude here, but I appreciated that part of this application. Thanks.
Thank you. I agree. I did not see anything in the record that demonstrated any of the primary or alternative sites needed to be moved, but I also appreciated us having additional things to work with and that flexibility that was built into the footprint. So, alternative 1. Thank you.
And same for me, didn't see anything in the record that would lead me to try to preclude any of the sites, and appreciated the applicant's focus on the efficiency that this flexibility would allow, focusing on the different size power blocks, and also making sure that there wasn't unusable strips of land as a potential negative impact if the design were constrained. So appreciated that focus, so I'm at alt 1 as well.
Thank you. And our next issue is 5B, and it's asking which route we would authorize for the proposed Gen tie line. I'm at alt 1, authorizing the primary route. I would note that the primary route is shorter. It follows a more direct path, and it's also the preferred route by participating landowners. So alt 1 there.
Alt 1 for the same reasons. Thank you.
Alt 1 for me.
Thank you. And then issue 6 is about standard conditions, which standard conditions should be attached to the proposed project. Excuse me. For this issue, I'm at alt 1. I would include all of the standard order conditions as reasonable. I will note there was some particular discussion under this issue about stray voltage testing. the applicant in its testimony did say it doesn't object to stray voltage testimony, but then is also saying that it finds 6I essentially to be duplicative of other safety and engineering-related conditions. I'll just say for this, first of all, if at a later time there appears to be stray voltage issues at any of the close-by dairy operations, it wouldn't be known if the solar facility could be a contributing factor to that if there were no measurements prior to construction. I thought it could be beneficial for future solar construction cases if our staff were to look at the results from solar facilities that have been built and what we've been requiring stray voltage testing for quite a while. If there's any update about that related to what the applicant is saying here that could inform us, that might be interesting to know. But I would keep this included here, and I'm at Alt 1.
Thank you. I'm also at Alt 1, and I agree. I think it's very important to keep the stray voltage condition in. As you guys have heard me say, I don't like duplicative conditions, but this is not duplicative to me. This is unique and specific, and because it deals with the stray voltage issue. And I think the risk of not including it now and then having stray voltage become an issue at some point in the future is that the risk of that outweighs the benefits of excluding it. Again, same reasons that you noted, Commissioner Nieto, but stray voltage should stay in, and I'm at Alt 1 as well. Thank you.
And I agree with the two of you, and I am at Alt 1.
Thank you. All right, and then issue 7 deals with project-specific conditions. 7A is about soil erosion and a winter stabilization plan. This is an interesting issue. It's one that we've had a little bit of discussion about before. We approved using the winter soil stabilization plan in Maple Grove Solar. And then in Vista Sands, we did not. And in Vista Sands, we talked about continuing to discuss this issue on a project-by-project basis and developing a little bit more discussion about it. So dug into this in the record, put a little bit of additional thought in it as a follow-on to our last discussion in Vista Sands. And what I found here was essentially the applicant is stating in this record that it doesn't want this condition because, number one, we didn't approve it in the previous case, and then number two, it might be costly and burdensome. That did not fully convince me. We have detailed description and testimony from DNR about the actual risks and what has happened on Wisconsin construction sites for solar. And then we have photos showing what that looked like. And we didn't get as much from the applicant. We got those comments about the concerns. This condition, what it's asking for, the applicant did not show it to be burdensome or costly. This is basically asking for a very common DNR two-pager explaining what steps will be used to stabilize the soils in the winter. And then so that DNR and the applicant can get on the same page about any steps that might lead to the conditions we've seen in the photos and we've seen in other solar construction sites in Wisconsin. I would note that the DNR does this for construction in our state, not just for solar, but for other construction type of projects. So these are common filings at the DNR. And a lot of our neighboring cold weather states do this as well at their DNRs and their DOTs for any construction that's going to keep going on in the winter. Because it's like witness Whiten says, the freeze and thaw cycles and rain events on frozen ground create a unique set of challenges that need to be taken into consideration if construction is planned to continue beyond the growing season. So the applicant has said here, and I appreciate that it's going to do the right thing either way. And what we know, and we've seen in our own history of solar projects at the commission, that if the soil is not stabilized and it leaves the site, it affects productivity on the lands. And Don Harvest Solar has talked about how it's going to leave the lands more productive than they are currently. We've seen the soil erode into ditches and water bodies where it's not supposed to be and cause sedimentation. And then the big thing we've seen is that the soil goes onto neighboring farmers' land and it causes complaints, and the neighboring farmers have to call and file complaints. And so I think these projects, due to their size, can disturb a lot of ground on a lot of acres. And so I thought a little bit about our discussion about project-specific, site-specific, and I think to me the acreage is part of the specific concern here, especially if there's going to be winter construction. And I just came back to the question, is the applicant not planning to stabilize the soils in the winter, which could be problematic, or is it more worried that filing this report will lead to further burdensome requirements as it works with DNR? The applicant didn't get really descriptive about that on the record, but I will say if the concern is that this will create more burdensome requirements down the road, I think there's something that we can do about that here. We have a number of conditions where we've added language like as practicable to conditions to make sure that everyone involved understands that we're looking for kind of a common sense, cost-effective measure, and we're not looking to include something that will kind of snowball into something particularly burdensome. So that is my thinking on this as we continue to discuss. Where I'm at right now is I would stay with approving this condition, but I would also alternatively be open to including this condition and modifying it to say as practicable in order to address some of those concerns about some sort of potential additional cost or burden. Thanks.
Thank you. So I've been consistently unsupportive of this condition for a number of reasons that you addressed, Commissioner Nato, in your comments. And I just want to say that our discussion last time about one of my issues being not that for project-specific conditions, it needs to be specific to the project and kind of in consideration of the unique aspects of that site. The timing of this did not allow for what my comments on that last CPCN to be integrated to this here. So it's not that, we said something and then it didn't happen. It was just the timing of everything. So I still feel strongly that work can be done and is now being done about making sure that if and when we are imposing project-specific conditions on projects, that, again, it has that unique consideration of the site that's before us and not just a general extra condition. So I'm at alternative 3, which is where the applicant is as well, and I'm going to stay there. I do think your proposed modification to 2 makes sense and allows a little bit more flexibility, especially in light of the lack of overall specificity as it relates to winter stabilization at this specific site. And I do think that the 3 of us especially have come to reasonable consensus on a lot of these extra or even standard conditions by building in a little bit of flexibility for the applicants, whether it's, fencing or winter stabilization and some of the other things that we know could impact schedule and cost. And so we want to make sure that it's not this do it or else. It's like, hey, if you can do it, it's important to us, but also we are understanding of the fact that not all of these things are practicable all the time. So I'm curious to hear what Commissioner Hawkins, how he feels about this in general and especially about the modified condition. But that's kind of where I am right now. Thank you.
Thanks. I reviewed this in light of our recent discussions on this topic and have kind of a new appreciation for the concerns that the chair raised on the site-specific nature of this, and the evidence in the record from DNR was from a project in Grant County, and where it's hillier than Rock County. And so in thinking about whether or not this was a reasonable site-specific requirement, I asked staff during, my briefing and discussion about is this a real threat in a flat area? And, just kind of logically, it's less of a problem in a flat area. And so I'm at alt 3 on this one, just because there wasn't a specific clear case made that this is going to be a problem at this project site. the size of the project site is certainly one thing, and that's what Commissioner Nieto was talking about, but as it relates to winter stabilization, I didn't know if that is all exposed earth everywhere, or is it more of a problem, as was shown in the exhibits from DNR, in hilly areas where the runoff can really get out of control, and so that's what we've seen in some projects. So I'm at alternative 3, and yeah, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. First of all, you did an excellent job of articulating a site-specific difference, like the Grant County topography versus Rock County topography. And I think, Wisconsin does have some really unique geologic and site differences throughout the state that absolutely should be considered when coming up with project-specific site conditions. I also think that while the applicant also needs to start to work some of those things into the record, that, it's incumbent on DNR, like we've said, to help explain kind of the site-specific needs for certain things that they're recommending that we impose. I also think, you guys talked about this too, the size of the footprint of the project. Sometimes we have projects that are that are not as contiguous either, and I think those present unique situations that should also be considered when coming up with, site-specific conditions. So I do think that there is absolutely room for those kinds of things to start being considered and worked into the record from both the DNR and from our applicants. And I'm really hopeful that, again, no one's fault that it didn't happen here because of the timing, but I'm hopeful that we start to see some of that more unique, specific work happening on behalf of everyone who's weighing in on this, so that we have some of those things to consider when it comes before us again, because we know it will continue to be here. So I'm going to stay at alternative 3 as well, but I really look forward to kind of the special consideration that's going to be given to this going forward based on some of the things that we've raised in our recent CPCN discussions.
Thank you. And thank you both for your comments on this. I'll raise this for your consideration, whether it's now or in the future on the next one. I thought about the slope issue too. There's the slope percentages on this project are low. And so when you have like high slope percentages, of course, you're going to have very specific runoff concerns that are exacerbated. You don't really have that here. You have a generally flat grade. And where you start to see slopes in the topography here is when you get closer to the water, any waterways, and you start getting negative slopes down towards bodies of water. So even though overall the topography is flat, you have specific areas of concern. And one thing that makes me think of, I think to Chair Strand, your points about us kind of coming to this consistency around common sense order points that take into account specific conditions and are reasonable. One thing we could potentially do with this is have the condition wording be something along the lines of as necessary, like for site specific, as necessary to the site and as practicable. And then we might not need to be looking at like the slope of each kind of array area of each site every time, and that might cover for the DNR to understand what we're looking for as well, that there might be particular areas where this is really important and others where it just doesn't make sense, and we're saying as practicable. So that might allow us to have like an across-the-board order condition that we can apply each time that makes sense. So I'm going to put that out there for this discussion now, and
I think that's a good idea. I think that's something that we should do or consider next time. I also worry just a little bit about the kind of the sequence of things. I think I would prefer that these site-specific considerations are considered ahead of time so that they're in the record and that there's development of that issue from the parties for us to then decide how we want or don't want to condition that specific condition or project based on the discussion in the record, rather than like building this flexibility into the condition before that kind of, I feel like that would be us doing the work for them, where I want the work to be done and then presented to us so we can weigh in. I think is probably what I'm trying to say about the sequence. So I like that idea for future consideration, especially if there is site-specific evidence in the record that helps us build in that flexibility at that time. And again, I would prefer that we are able to review it and then put it in, rather than put it in and then have that flexibility happen on the back end. So that's where I am right now. But again, I really appreciate you guys thinking about this and digging into it, especially since it's something that I've just almost completely consistently not supported. because I think all of the things that we're talking about today are helping to make our review of this and the records on this going forward just stronger and better. So if nothing else, I really appreciate your engagement on this condition. So I will stay at 3 for now, but again, thank you guys, and I'm looking forward to kind of where we go with this. I think it's evolving in a good way.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I support the chair's approach there, and I think, I guess it's, because it's project-specific conditions, one thing that we might want to include in that development of the record that was just being spoken about is the anticipated timeline, how relevant, you know, if a CPCN is granted in the springtime and construction commences immediately, this might not be relevant for all projects. And so, you know, in getting information on the site-specific nature, I think we should also be getting information on like how much of the project is even at risk of this being a winter problem at all. And that might be my ignorance on, do we try to grant, you know, certifications that like build in flexibility and things don't go to schedule, so we might not want to do that, but I think it's something that we could consider for helping get additional information as well.
So I promise we can stop talking about this, but I totally agree. I think a long time ago, when I started to raise issues about this condition, you guys all know, we have a really short construction window in Wisconsin because of the weather and because of the frozen ground. And so impacts to schedule, which then impact cost, are some of the reasons that I have concerns about this condition, especially when it's not project specific. So I think understanding the types of impacts to the schedule that a condition like this would impose on a project is important. I also think, you know, we've seen other conditions, project specific, that talk about not just, you know, not using parts of the project footprint within a certain time frame. And I also worry, because of our shortened construction season, what impacts those would have on the schedule. And so again, if we're going to start thinking more specifically about certain conditions, I think that is exactly the type of information that should be included in the record of evidence, so that we are informed on deciding whether or not, you know, kind of it's a reasonable condition, whether the costs outweigh the benefits, things like that, when we're looking into project-specific conditions, including shortening timelines, seasonal requirements, and project area restrictions, if that makes sense.
It does.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and thanks to you both for the continued discussion on this one as we go forward with these projects. I appreciate it. So 7B is project-specific as well, and this is about the usage of non-native species in the project area. And in this case, there was a lot of good and unique back and forth in the docket. It came up in rebuttal and surrebuttal, and DNR and Don Harvest Solar came up with a good compromise around the seed mix issue that we've seen in every single solar case. So here I'm at Alt 1, and we'll be interested to see how this goes.
Thank you, Commissioner Ito. I am in total agreement. I'm at Alt 1 on this. Seed mix has been another one of those conditions that has ebbed and flowed in our various CPCNs, and I give the applicant credit for coming up with this alternative, but especially appreciate the DNR being open-minded and finding a constructive path forward. I think this is a great example of DNR and applicant collaboration and reasonableness on things that have not necessarily been consensus points in the past. And so this is exactly kind of, I think, what we're talking about on this process, and I strongly support Alt 1 for those reasons. Thank you.
Alt 1 for me as well, happy to see agreement arrived at, and also looking forward to getting information on some of these pilots that we've had in this area and learning some of the outcomes of that.
Great, thank you. All right, and 7C are project-specific environmental resource conditions related to wetlands and waterways. Here I was at Alt 2, essentially modifying this condition consistent with the compromise language we just discussed in 7B.
Thank you for catching that. I was in the exact same spot. So Alt 2, because in accordance with our decision in 7B.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes, thank you for catching that, because I didn't, so Alt 2 for me as well.
Thank you. I'm also going to catch Alt 2 at the end, don't worry. Yeah. We've got that, yeah. All right, next 8 is uncontested. 8B is about undue adverse impacts on other environmental values, and here I'm at Alt 1.
I'm at Alt 1 as well. Thank you.
Alt 1 for me as well.
Great, thank you. And then issue 9 is should the commission grant a CPCN for the project? And I am at Alt 2, that we should grant the CPCN with conditions.
Alt 2. Good catch. Thank you.
Thanks.
2 for me as well.
Let's just make sure that our Chief Legal Counsel, Kara, has everything she needs.
Yes, so for issue 7A, Commissioner Nato, are you still a nay for alternative 3?
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then for the conditions, we would like the language of as practicable, the applicant shall.
I think because Commissioner Hawkins and I were at alternative 3, that condition would not need to be modified because it would be coming out.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Is there a modification to issue 9? No, those are as stated. Okay.
Yep, just those.
So we have no language changes.
The 7B modification would just be, okay, so for 7C, there's a modification, it would be in accordance with the commission's decision in issue 7B.
Okay.
When we talk, so there's a directive about minimizing erosion potential, it's this one, vegetative district, so it would be in accordance with the commission's decision in 7B.
Okay.
That would be, I think, the only modification, but I want to make sure you guys are okay with that.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yes, that
Okay,
does.
you guys, everyone's okay?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for leading our discussion. I think we're ready for a motion, if you have what you need.
I have what I need.
Awesome, thank you.
In docket 9809 CE 100, I move we approve the construction of Dawn Harvest Solar consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much to Commissioner Nieto for leading our discussion today, and thank you guys for being such a wonderful audience. That does conclude our official business. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, May 1st, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, May 1st, 2025 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.